The mining hauler drifted through the asteroid belt, its cargo hold full of platinum and rare metals. 3 months of hard work in the outer reaches, and the crew of 12 was ready to go home. Anne Reeves sat in the pilot's seat, reviewing their haul one more time. The numbers looked good, real good, enough to keep their families comfortable for a year, maybe longer. "Hey, Anne, you seeing this?" Her communications officer, David Park, turned from his console with a confused look. "I'm getting nothing from Earth Control, no traffic signals, no beacon responses, just silence." Anne frowned. Earth Control never went silent, ever. "Check the equipment, maybe we burned out a receiver panel." 20 minutes of diagnostics showed everything working perfectly. The silence continued. Anne ordered a course correction, pushing the hauler's engines harder than recommended. Something felt wrong, very wrong. As they approached Earth's orbital space, the wrongness became visible. Debris fields stretched for thousands of kilometers. Shattered satellites tumbled in broken orbits. The International Space Station, humanity's pride for over a century, existed only as twisted metal fragments. Anne's hands gripped the controls until her knuckles turned white. "Get visual on Earth," she whispered. "Now." The main screen flickered to life and 12 people stopped breathing. Earth's blue and green surface was gone. In its place, a planet of ash and fire. The oceans boiled, steam rising into an atmosphere torn and scattered. Entire continents glowed red from fires that consumed everything. No cities, no lights, no signs of the 8 billion souls who had called it home. David's voice cracked. What happened?" Anne pulled up the ship's data logs, scanning backward through recorded signals. 3 months ago, just after they'd left for the belt. There. A final transmission cluster, hundreds of them, all panicked and desperate. She played the first one. Static, then a woman's voice, professional but terrified. "This is Geneva emergency broadcast. Unidentified fleet has entered orbit. They're not responding to hails. They're not. Oh God, they're firing. Everyone to the bunkers. This is not a drill. They're firing on civilian centers. There." The transmission ended in a burst of interference. Anne played another. A man this time younger, crying. "Mom, if you get this, I love you. The sky is burning. They came from nowhere and just started killing us. No warnings, no demands, nothing. Why would they do this?" Another voice, older, a military officer. "All colonial stations, this is Admiral Foster, Pacific Command. If anyone hears this, Earth is lost. Enemy bombardment is systematic and total. Death toll estimated at. Everyone, they're killing everyone. Whoever did this used weapons we've never seen. Our defenses lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes. We had no chance. To any survivors out there, remember us. Remember." Silence. Anne played transmission after transmission. The story was always the same. Massive alien fleet appeared without warning. No communication, no demands for surrender, just immediate overwhelming destruction. Every military installation hit first, then power grids, then population centers. The attack lasted 72 hours. By the end, nothing lived on Earth's surface. The last transmission came from a bunker deep under what used to be Switzerland. A scientist, her voice hollow and defeated. "This is Dr. Lisa Hammond, Geneva Research Facility. We're the last ones, atmospheric integrity failing. The aliens, they're called the Drethic Covenant according to our database matches. They've done this before, to other species, dozens of them. They find civilizations that show rapid advancement and they erase them, preemptive extinction. We were flagged as dangerous. They gave no reason, they gave no chance. They just ended us. To whoever finds this, humanity deserved better. We deserved." The transmission dissolved into static, then nothing. Anne sat in silence for a long time. Her crew wept around her. Some vomited. Others just stared at the screen, unable to process what they were seeing. 8.7 billion people. Gone. Their families, their friends, their entire world reduced to a burning cinder in less than a week. Finally, Anne spoke, her voice cold and steady. "David, I need you to do something for me. Send out a broadcast on all colonial frequencies. Every human settlement, every research station, every mining outpost, every ship. I need them all to hear this." What should I say?" "Tell them Earth is gone. Tell them the Drethic Covenant killed everyone, and tell them we're not running, we're not hiding. Anne's eyes reflected the burning planet on the screen. We're gathering every human who still breathes, every ship that still flies, every weapon we can build. And we're miners, we're not soldiers. We're the only humans left who can do something about this. She turned to face her crew, and they saw something in her expression that made them straighten despite their grief. The Drethic thought they were preventing a threat. They thought they were eliminating a dangerous species before we could challenge them. She pulled up a star map marking the routes to every known human colony. Mars, Titan, the Belt settlements, the deep space research stations, 340 million humans scattered across 200 locations, not much compared to the billions lost, but enough. Maybe enough. They feared what we might become, Anne said quietly. So let's show them they were right to be afraid. 14 days after Earth died, representatives from every surviving human settlement crowded into the Titan orbital platform's main assembly hall. 340 million humans reduced to voices on screens and desperate faces in person. Anne had sent her message, and they had answered. Not everyone, but enough. The Martian delegate spoke first, a woman named Patricia Wung who oversaw the industrial complexes in Olympus Mons. We have 80 million people on Mars. Our manufacturing capability is substantial. But you're talking about war with a species that erased Earth in 3 days. What exactly are we supposed to do? Anne stood at the center of the room, her miner's jumpsuit still stained with asteroid dust. She hadn't changed since returning, hadn't slept much either. We do to them what they did to us. Revenge? An older man from the Belt settlements shook his head. That's suicide. The Drethic Covenant has been exterminating species for 1,000 years according to our records. They have fleets, armies, weapons, technology centuries beyond ours. They do, Anne agreed, but they don't have what we have anymore. And what's that? What do we possibly have that they don't? Nothing left to lose. Silence filled the hall. People looked at each other, at their hands, at the floor. Some nodded slowly, others looked sick. A younger voice spoke up from one of the screens, a military officer from the Europa Research Station. I analyzed what we could recover from Earth's final transmissions, the Drethic weapons' signatures, their shield frequencies, engine outputs. I found something. Every eye turned to the screen. The officer who introduced himself as Lieutenant Barnes pulled up technical displays. Their technology is advanced, yes, but it's standardized. Every ship uses the same shield frequency, same energy signature. They've been using the same basic designs for centuries because nothing has challenged them. They got lazy. How does that help us? Patricia asked. Because our technology is different, completely different. We developed independently using different principles. Our energy signatures don't match anything in their threat database. Barnes highlighted several graphs. More importantly, their shields are vulnerable to cascading electromagnetic pulses, something we stumbled on by accident during fusion reactor testing 20 years ago. We never weaponized it because we never needed to. Until now, Anne said softly. Barnes nodded. Give me 6 months and access to the outer research stations, and I can design weapons specifically to kill Drethic ships. Missiles that their sensors won't detect until impact. Warheads that will collapse their shields before they know what hit them. The room buzzed with conversation. Hope, maybe, or just desperate grasping at possibilities. Patricia spoke again. Even if we can hurt them, we're talking about building a war fleet from scratch. Mars has the industrial base, but we're set up for construction, mining equipment, habitat modules, not warships. Then we convert everything, Anne said. Every factory, every foundry, every construction dock. We stop building homes and start building weapons. We take every cargo hauler in the belt and retrofit them with armor and guns. We strip every resource we have and pour it into one single goal. And what goal is that? Someone asked. We can't bring Earth back. Anne's expression hardened. No, but we can make sure the species that killed it doesn't survive to kill anyone else. The Drethic Covenant has ended dozens of civilizations. If we don't stop them, they'll keep doing it. forever. A woman from the Titan settlement stood up. I was born on Earth, lived there for 40 years before I took a job here. Everyone I know is dead. My children, my parents, my friends, all of them. Her voice shook, but she kept talking. If we're building weapons, if we're going to war, then I want to help, whatever it takes. More voices joined hers, people standing, raising hands, pledging. Resources and labor and lives. Not everyone agreed. Some wanted to scatter, to hide deeper in space where the Drethik might never find them. But the majority voted for war. Anne pulled up a strategic display showing known Drethik space. Intelligence from Earth's archives shows the Covenant controls 3 core systems and over 40 colony worlds. Their total population is estimated at 200 billion across all territories. Someone gasped, 200 billion, and you want us 300 million to fight them? No, Anne said quietly. I want us to exterminate them, every last one. The room went silent again. The weight of what she was proposing settled on everyone present. Not a battle, not a war, complete extinction of an entire species. Patricia Wong spoke carefully. You're talking about genocide. I'm talking about justice, Anne replied. They didn't give Earth a choice. They didn't give us a chance to negotiate or surrender. They just showed up and killed everyone. 8.7 billion humans dead in 3 days. So yes, I'm proposing we kill 200 billion Drethik. It's simple mathematics. They set the rules of this war when they wiped out our species. We're just playing by their rules now. An old miner from the belt, someone who had been watching quietly, cleared his throat. I remember when humanity went to space to explore, to learn, to meet other species as friends. Now we're planning the biggest mass murder in history. What does that make us? Anne met his eyes without flinching. Survivors, and survivors do what they must to ensure their survival. The Drethik proved that peace isn't an option. They taught us that lesson with 8 billion corpses, so we learned. She turned to address the entire assembly. I need a decision. Are we running or fighting? Because if we're fighting, then we commit everything. No half measures, no mercy. We build an armada and we use it to erase the Drethik from existence. The vote took 3 hours. When it finished, the decision was unanimous. Humanity, what remained of it, chose war. 18 months. That was the timeline humanity gave itself to transform from scattered refugees into an instrument of extinction. Every day of those months mattered. Every hour counted. On Mars, the foundries burned day and night. Patricia Wong stood in the main production facility, watching molten metal pour into molds designed for Starship. Hulls, the workers had given up sleep cycles, operating on rotation schedules that maximized output. Children too young to work the heavy machinery ran supplies and maintained equipment. The elderly worked quality control, their experienced eyes catching flaws that could mean the difference between a ship that fought and one that exploded. How many? Patricia asked her production chief. 17 completed this week, 62 in the final assembly stage. If we maintain pace, we'll have 2,000 combat-capable vessels by deadline. 2,000 ships, against a fleet that numbered in the tens of thousands, but numbers weren't everything. Lieutenant Barnes had proven that. In the outer research stations, Barnes and his team worked without rest. The breakthrough came 4 months into development. They called it the Widowmaker, a missile that used human-specific energy signatures to remain invisible to Drethik sensors until the moment of impact. The warhead itself contained a weaponized version of the electromagnetic pulse that collapsed Covenant shields. It works, Barnes announced during a test demonstration, watching a captured Drethik drone's shields flicker and die before the follow-up explosive tore it apart. One missile disables, the second one kills. They'll never see it coming. But missiles alone wouldn't win. Anne knew that. She spent months traveling between settlements, coordinating efforts, making decisions that kept her awake at night. When the Belt miners presented their retrofitted cargo haulers, she approved them despite knowing most wouldn't survive their first engagement. When the Titan engineers proposed using terraforming equipment as planetary bombardment weapons, she authorized it. Everything became a tool of war. The psychological shift happened gradually, then suddenly. People stopped crying, stopped mourning in the traditional sense. Grief transformed into something colder, sharper, purpose. Every human who survived Earth's death knew someone who died. Most knew hundreds of someones. That loss bonded them in ways that transcended old divisions. Anne visited Earth once during the preparation period. She took a small shuttle down to the surface, landing in what remained of her hometown. Nothing was recognizable. The buildings had melted. The streets had burned away. Ash covered everything in thick drifts like snow that would never melt. She knelt and filled a small container with the ash, no way to know whose remains she carried. Maybe neighbors, maybe strangers, maybe her own family. It didn't matter anymore. They were all just ash now, all equal in death. For every grain, she whispered, a Drethic ship falls. Back in space, the preparations continued. Human engineers developed a new type of armor for their ships, using composite materials that absorbed energy rather than reflecting it. Combined with engines that produced minimal heat signatures, human vessels became nearly invisible to standard Covenant sensors. Stealth became humanity's doctrine. Strike from nowhere, disappear before retaliation, bleed them slowly. Training programs ran constantly. Every human learned to operate weapons, navigate ships, perform repairs under combat conditions. Even those who would never see battle trained because everyone needed to contribute. The elderly who couldn't fight taught tactics, shared wisdom, maintained morale. Children ran communication networks, their quick minds adapting to the complex systems. The Covenant remained unaware. Intelligence gathered from Earth's archives showed the Drethic considered humanity extinct. They had moved on to monitoring other species, looking for the next civilization to preemptively destroy. Their arrogance would be their weakness. 13 months into preparation, Anne called another assembly. This time, people attended from their workstations, too busy to travel. She appeared on screens across all human settlements. The fleet is taking shape, she announced. We'll have 2,000 warships, 15,000 support vessels, and enough Widow-makers to disable every Covenant ship in their core systems. Our stealth technology works. Our weapons work. Everything is coming together. She paused, looking at the faces watching her. Tired faces, determined faces. But before we launch this campaign, I need everyone to understand what we're about to do. We're not going to fight the Drethic military. We're going to exterminate their species. That means targeting their colonies, their civilians, their children. Everything they did to Earth we'll do to them, and we'll do it 40 times over. Some people looked away, others nodded. A few wept quietly, but no one objected. I know what this makes us, Anne continued. I know we're becoming the monsters we're fighting, but the alternative is letting the Drethic continue there. Extinction campaigns unchallenged. How many other species will they erase? How many billions more will die because we chose mercy over justice? She held up the container of ash from Earth. Every person in here deserved to live. They deserved to grow old, to see their children grow, to explore the stars. The Drethic took that from them without hesitation, without mercy, without reason beyond fear of what we might become. So let's show them their fear was justified. The response came not in cheers or applause, but in quiet acknowledgement. People returned to their work with renewed focus. The foundries produced ships faster. The weapons facilities pushed output higher. The training programs intensified. 5 months later, the human fleet assembled for the first time. 2,000 warships, each painted in matte black that absorbed sensor scans. Each crewed by people who had lost everything. Each carrying weapons designed for a single purpose. Anne stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, looking at the assembled armada. Not impressive by galactic standards. Small, actually. Pathetic compared to the forces they would face. But every ship carried humanity's collective rage, grief, and determination. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. We launch in 3 days. Target is Hreshkal 7, a Drethic agricultural colony, 3 billion inhabitants, minimal defenses. It will be the first of many. She paused. No negotiations, no mercy, no survivors. Are we clear? Across 2,000 ships, the response came back as one voice. Clear. Hreshkel 7 hung in space like a green jewel, its surface covered in agricultural domes and vast farming complexes. 3 billion Drethik lived there, growing food for the Covenant's core systems. Families, workers, children attending schools, citizens who had nothing to do with Earth's destruction. Anne watched the planet from her command ship, her expression blank. Beside her, Lieutenant Barnes monitored the stealth systems. Every human vessel remained invisible to the Covenant's sensors below. They had positioned themselves in high orbit over 12 hours ago, waiting, preparing. "We could target military installations only," Barnes said quietly. "The orbital defense platforms, the garrison bases, make it a military strike." No, Anne's voice was flat. They didn't limit themselves to military targets when they killed Earth, every city, every town, every farm. 8.7 billion dead, military and civilian alike. We mirror their tactics exactly. Some of the crew are having second thoughts. Then they can transfer to support vessels and let someone else take their position. Anne turned to face him. "We voted for this, all of us. We knew what it meant. If anyone wants out now, I understand. But this attack happens regardless." Barnes nodded slowly and returned to his station. No one requested transfers. Anne opened the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is command. Target packages are uploaded. Each vessel has specific coordinates. Population centers, agricultural domes, processing facilities, power generation. We hit everything simultaneously. They get no time to evacuate, no chance to organize defense." She pulled up the tactical display showing 2,000 red dots positioned above the planet. Each dot represented a human ship. Each ship carried enough widow makers to level a city. Simple mathematics, efficient distribution, clinical execution. "Remember Earth," she said, and it wasn't a rallying cry or a war chant, just a quiet statement of fact. "Attack begins in 30 seconds. The seconds counted down in silence. Anne thought about the people below going about their lives, eating breakfast, going to work, teaching children, living, just like humans had been living when the Covenant appeared and started firing. 0. The first wave of Widowmakers dropped from stealth. 2,000 ships launched their payloads simultaneously, missiles streaking toward the surface faster than Covenant sensors could track. The electromagnetic pulses hit first, cascading across planetary shields and orbital platforms. Every defense system flickered and died in perfect synchronization. Before the Drethik could react, the second wave hit. Kinetic warheads and high-explosive missiles impacted population centers with devastating precision. The largest city on Hreshkel 7, home to 400 million, disappeared in a series of overlapping explosions. The shockwave flattened everything within 100 kilometers. Anne watched dispassionately as the agricultural domes ruptured, spilling atmosphere into space. As processing facilities exploded, the fires spreading to residential zones. As schools and hospitals and homes vanished in fireballs that consumed everything. The Covenant orbital garrison finally responded, launching fighters and attempting to raise shields. Too late. Human ships had already repositioned, maintaining stealth protocols. The garrison's sensors showed nothing but empty space while Widowmakers tore their platforms apart. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies," the communications officer reported. "Distress signals, calls for help, demands to know who's attacking." "Ignore them," Anne ordered. "Continue bombardment according to schedule." 72 hours. That's how long Earth's bombardment lasted. Anne gave Hreshkel 7 the same courtesy. For 3 days, human ships systematically destroyed every settlement, every structure, every sign of civilization on the planet. They worked methodically, checking satellite imagery to ensure nothing survived. When Drethik tried to evacuate underground, humans collapsed the tunnel systems with bunker-buster weapons. By the end of our 72, Hreshkel 7 was a dead world. 3.2 billion Drethik reduced to corpses and ash. The green jewel now looked gray and lifeless, smoke rising from 1,000 impact craters. Anne recorded a message and had it broadcast on all Covenant frequencies. Her face appeared calm, almost pleasant, as she spoke. The planet you knew as Hreshkel 7 is gone. 3.2 billion of your people died in the past 72 hours. This is payment for Earth. We are humanity, and we are very much alive. She held up the container of Earth's ash. You killed 8.7 billion humans. By our calculations, we need to kill approximately 8.6 billion more Drethik to balance the scales. We're going to do this mathematically, one world at a time, one population center at a time, until the debt is paid in full. You can surrender, you can beg, you can offer reparations or peace treaties. We don't care. You gave Earth no such options. You simply destroyed us because you feared what we might become. So now we'll show you exactly what you created. She leaned forward slightly. Run if you want, hide if you can, it won't matter. We're patient, we're methodical, and we won't stop until your species is extinct. The message ended. Anne closed the channel and turned to her crew. Set course for the next target, the Covenant's industrial colony at Dreth Minor, 2 billion inhabitants. We'll need different tactics there since it has heavier defenses. As the human fleet prepared to jump, other species across the galaxy intercepted. The broadcast, the message spread rapidly through diplomatic channels. Species that had suffered under Drethik threats watched with a mixture of horror and satisfaction. The exterminators were being exterminated. The Covenant High Command received the message and immediately convened emergency sessions. For the first time in their 1,000-year history, they faced an enemy that didn't fear them. An enemy that couldn't be negotiated with or intimidated. An enemy that had nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. They mobilized their main fleet, 50,000 warships drawn from defensive positions across Covenant space. The order was simple: find the humans, crush them, erase this threat before it spreads. But the humans were already gone, jumping to their next target, leaving only a dead world and a terrifying promise behind. The Covenant had taught humanity how to wage war. Now humanity would teach them how to die. The Drethik Covenant sent everything. 50,000 warships pulled from defensive positions across their empire, the largest military force they had assembled in centuries. Admiral Kreshnel commanded from the flagship Inevitable Judgment, confident that sheer numbers would overwhelm the primitive human fleet. They destroyed 2 of our colonies, Kreshnel addressed his officers. Killed 5 billion of our citizens with cowardly hit-and-run tactics, but they made a mistake. They revealed themselves. Now we hunt them down and finish what we started at Earth. The massive fleet tracked the humans to an uncharted region of space, a nebula filled with the remnants of dead planets orbiting a neutron star. Sensor readings showed the human fleet hiding in the planetary debris field, their smaller ships trying to use the cover to mask their signatures. They're trapped, Kreshnel's tactical officer reported. The debris field limits their maneuverability. We can surround and destroy them. Do it, the Admiral ordered. No survivors. I want every human ship reduced to scrap. The Covenant fleet entered the graveyard, spreading into attack formation. 50,000 ships moving in perfect coordination, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had fought and destroyed entire civilizations before. These humans would be no different. Then the ambush sprung. Human ships didn't emerge from the debris field. They emerged from every direction, materializing from stealth positions. They had held for days, positioned behind asteroids beneath planet fragments within the nebula itself. The Covenant had walked into a kill zone without realizing it. Widowmakers launched in coordinated waves. Thousands of missiles, all timed to hit simultaneously. The electromagnetic pulses cascaded through the Covenant formation, and suddenly 50,000 warships found their shields failing at once. Shields down, someone screamed on the Inevitable Judgment's bridge. All ships reporting shield failure, cause unknown. Before Kreshnel could respond, the second wave hit. Human torpedoes, antimatter warheads that Barnes' team had developed specifically for this engagement. They tore through Covenant armor like it didn't exist, detonating inside ships and ripping them apart from within. "Return fire," Kreshnel shouted. Target anything that moves. But the Covenant sensors couldn't lock onto the human ships. The stealth systems kept them invisible even as they fired, appearing only as brief energy signatures before vanishing again. The Covenant fired blindly into space, hitting their own vessels more often than enemy ones. Human tactics were perfect. Strike, move, strike again from a different angle. Never stay in one place. Never give the enemy time to coordinate. The Widowmakers kept coming, wave after wave, disabling Covenant shields faster than they could reboot. The antimatter torpedoes found target after target. 6 hours into the engagement, the Covenant fleet had lost 30,000 ships. The humans had lost maybe 200. The mathematics were brutal and undeniable. "We need to retreat," Kreshnel's second officer urged. "Regroup and reassess." "No," the admiral slammed his hand on the console. "We have them outnumbered. We just need to adapt." But there was no adapting to weapons you couldn't detect and enemies you couldn't see. The Covenant had built their empire on technological superiority, but the humans had invented entirely new technologies in 18 months of focused development. Technologies specifically designed to counter everything the Drethik used. More Covenant ships died. Explosions lit up the nebula as antimatter warheads found their marks. Human vessels danced through the battlefield like ghosts, untouchable and relentless. Anne watched from her command ship, coordinating strike patterns and target priorities. This wasn't a battle, it was an execution. The Covenant had come expecting to crush a desperate enemy. Instead, they found a species that had learned hard lessons and applied them with devastating efficiency. "Enemy fleet is breaking formation," Lieutenant Barnes reported. "They're trying to scatter." "Let 3,000 of them go," Anne ordered. "Kill the rest." "Let them go, why?" "Because they need to carry the message back. Fear is a weapon too. The Covenant thought they were the predators. Time they learned what it feels like to be prey." The human fleet executed her orders perfectly. They targeted ships trying to maintain formation and ignored those fleeing. The message was clear: run and live, stand and die. By the time the engagement ended, 3,000 Covenant ships limped away at maximum speed, their crews traumatized and broken. 47,000 warships destroyed. Crew deaths estimated at 30 million. The Covenant's main fleet, their pride and their power, reduced to debris in a single engagement. And transmitted another message across Covenant space. "You sent 50,000 ships to destroy us. We're sending 3,000 back so you understand what happens when you fight humanity. This is justice. This is mathematics. This is what you created when you burned Earth." The surviving ships reached Covenant territory and immediately began spreading reports. Reports that contradicted everything the Drethik understood about warfare. Reports about an enemy that appeared from nowhere, struck with impossible precision, and vanished before retaliation. Reports about weapons that ignored their shields and tore through their armor like it didn't exist. Panic spread through Covenant space faster than the surviving ships. Colony worlds began demanding protection. Civilian populations started evacuating border territories. The High Command faced a crisis they had never imagined. For 1,000 years, they had been the ones other species feared. Now they were the ones afraid. The Covenant made a desperate decision: pull back all remaining forces to the 3 core systems. Evacuate the outer colonies and destroy them completely to deny the humans targets. Fortify the homeworlds and make them impregnable. 15 colony worlds were systematically bombarded by their own forces, orbital strikes turning thriving settlements into uninhabitable wastelands. Billions of Drethik citizens were evacuated in massive convoys, ships packed beyond capacity as they fled toward the core systems, and watched the evacuations through long-range reconnaissance. "They're running, destroying their own worlds to deny us targets." "Should we pursue the refugee convoys?" Barnes asked. Anne considered. The convoys were defenseless, civilian transports packed with families fleeing the war, easy targets, millions of deaths with minimal effort. "Yes," she said quietly. "Every ship, every convoy. They evacuated Earth civilians into the ground with orbital strikes. They get the same courtesy. Human vessels began hunting refugee convoys throughout Covenant space. The transports, overloaded and slow, couldn't escape and couldn't fight back. One by one, they died in silent explosions, their debris scattering across the void. 14 months after Earth died, the human fleet arrived at the Drethic homeworld, the planet where the Covenant had originated, home to 40 billion citizens who had retreated behind every defense their civilization could muster. Orbital platforms ringed the world like a steel crown. Automated weapons systems covered every approach vector. 20,000 remaining warships held defensive positions. The Drethic had built their homeworld into a fortress. Anne's fleet numbered 800 ships now. Losses from the sustained campaign had been heavy. But those 800 ships carried veterans who had fought through 24 engagements. Crews who had destroyed colonies and hunted refugee convoys and learned to kill without hesitation. They were enough. The Covenant transmitted on all frequencies, their messages switching between threats and pleas. They offered peace treaties. They offered reparations. They offered to surrender all remaining territory and retreat to their homeworld alone, isolated and contained. Anne listened to every message and responded to none of them. She simply positioned her fleet in high orbit and began preparations. "They're broadcasting images of children," the communications officer said, his voice strained. "Schools, hospitals, families, they're trying to make us see them as people." "Earth had children too," Anne replied. "Earth had schools and hospitals and families. The Drethic didn't care then, we won't care now." She opened the tactical display. The Drethic had fortified well, but fortifications assumed conventional warfare. They assumed attackers would try to breach defenses gradually. Wearing them down through attrition, the humans had different plans. "First wave," Anne ordered. "Execute ramming protocols." 200 human ships broke formation and accelerated toward the orbital platforms, not to engage them, to destroy them through kinetic impact. The crews had already evacuated to backup vessels, leaving the ships on automated courses. The Drethic defenses fired desperately, destroying some, but momentum and numbers won. Ships traveling at significant fractions of light speed hit orbital platforms, and both exploded in massive fireballs. The defensive ring shattered. Gaps appeared in the coverage. Before the Drethic could reposition, the second wave struck. Widowmakers targeting not the remaining platforms, but the planet's shield generators on the surface. Precision strikes that disabled the planetary defense network in minutes. "Shields down," Barnes reported. "Planet is exposed." Anne pulled up geological surveys of the Drethic homeworld. Detailed maps showing tectonic plates, volcanic systems, geological weak points. Data that would have been used for resource management or disaster prevention. Now weaponized. "Target the fault lines," she ordered. "I want seismic weapons on every major tectonic boundary, make their world tear itself apart." The remaining human ships launched modified terraforming equipment, tools designed to stabilize planets now configured to destabilize them. Penetrator weapons drove deep into the crust and detonated at precise depths. Fault lines that had been stable for millions of years suddenly shifted. Earthquakes rippled across continents. Volcanoes that had been dormant erupted simultaneously. The Drethic population centers, built without consideration for seismic activity on their stable world, collapsed. Buildings crumbled. Infrastructure failed. Billions died in the first hour as their cities came apart. But Anne wasn't finished. She activated the final weapon, something Barnes and his team had been constructing for months. A device stolen from humanity's own deep space research, originally designed for stellar mining, now repurposed as the ultimate weapon of extinction. The stellar destabilization device launched on a trajectory toward the Drethic sun. It would take hours to reach its destination, hours during which the Covenant broadcast increasingly desperate messages. "You've won," the Drethic High Command transmitted. "We surrender. Unconditionally, please stop this. Our people are dying. Our world is ending. We were wrong to destroy Earth. We were wrong about everything, please." Anne recorded her final message to the Covenant. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. You came to Earth without warning, without demands, without mercy. You killed 8.7 billion humans because you feared what we might become. You never gave us a choice. Now you have hours before your sun begins expanding, before your world burns in stellar fire. We're giving you exactly what you gave Earth. 72 hours of watching your civilization die, knowing there's nothing you can do to stop it. You wanted to prevent humanity from becoming a threat. Congratulations, you succeeded. You turned us into something far worse than you imagined. You turned us into you. The transmission ended. Anne turned to her crew. All ships withdraw to safe distance. We watch from here. The human fleet pulled back while the stellar destabilization device reached the Drethic sun and activated. The star, stable for billions of years, began changing, expanding. The process would take days, but the outcome was inevitable. The sun would consume its inner planets, including the Drethic homeworld. On the surface below, 40 billion Drethic watched their sky change color, watched their sun grow larger, brighter, hotter. The temperature began rising, first uncomfortable, then unbearable. Oceans started boiling. Atmosphere began stripping away, and there was nowhere to run. The human fleet maintained position, observing as the Covenant's homeworld died exactly as Earth had died, burned away by forces too massive to resist. Anne stood on the bridge for all 72 hours, watching without expression as an entire species ceased to exist. When it ended, when the Drethic homeworld was nothing but a cinder orbiting a dying star, Anne finally spoke. Broadcast to all remaining Covenant territories, any Drethic colonies that surrender will be allowed to survive, but they will be monitored, restricted. They will never be allowed to rebuild their military might. They will exist as a reminder to the galaxy about the price of genocide. Scattered colonies across Covenant space surrendered immediately. Approximately 2 billion Drethic survived, refugees on distant worlds living under human oversight. Not enough to threaten anyone, just enough to remember. Anne returned to Mars 3 months later. She walked through the memorial built from Earth's remains, walls carved with 8.7 billion names. The container of ash she had carried throughout the war finally found its place at the memorial's center. She didn't cry, didn't feel triumph or satisfaction, just emptiness. The war was over. Earth was avenged. The Drethic were extinct as a threat, and humanity had become the thing they swore they would never be. Genocidal exterminators who had erased an entire species from existence. The galaxy remembered. Other species watched and learned. Humanity had proven that mercy was a luxury only the powerful could afford, and that the powerless, when pushed far enough, would become powerful through sheer ruthlessness. The final inscription on Earth's memorial read simple words: no glory, no pride, just fact. They annihilated our world, we annihilated their species, never again. Anne walked away from the memorial and never returned.